You're listening to Hollywood Inclusive on the Good Talk Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Hollywood Inclusive. We have a great first episode for you today. We're going to be talking about Kenya Barris, A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah, plus for some reason we compare Hillary Clinton with the Star Wars franchise. We also plan to tell you all the different ways that you can interact with this podcast. We have a ton of them. We want to hear from you. All this and more.
Coming right up on Hollywood Inclusive.
Hi, I'm Laura Summers, and I'm a writer-director from Houston, Texas, and I'm one of the voices of the entertainment industry. I'm currently raising funds for my feature film, Rich Kids, which stars an all-Latino cast and is a story that hopes to shed light on the wealth gap in this country. You can find it on www.seedandspark.com. Get ready for Hollywood Inclusive in 4, 3, 2.
Hollywood Inclusive.
Hollywood Inclusive.
Hollywood Inclusive. Hear all the voices.
Hey there, my name is Darren Setti.
And I'm Kirk Moore.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Hollywood Inclusive. This is the first ever episode. This is the first time we're sitting down in front of a microphone together.
Yes, and it is hot and I'm sweating.
The air conditioning is off. We live in Los Angeles, and such is our world. So Kirk and I have known each other for a while. We sit around and talk about politics and the entertainment industry on a frequent basis, and we said, why not force other people to listen to us as we talk about these things?
Yes, and we hope you'll like what we have to say and all that good stuff, and and you'll get a chance to chime in and tell us what you think as well as we move forward.
So this is episode 1. Our plan is to do 4 sort of preview episodes. It's the football preseason is starting right this second.
Right.
We're treating our show like the NFL does, with giving you some preview weeks first, and then we're going to dive in right around episode 5, we're thinking.
So bringing in guests and, doing a little more participation with you guys and figuring all this stuff out. But, we first want you all to, know us, Darren and I, and figure out.
We're learning the ropes. To be completely honest, we're if we wanted to do this super professionally, we would have a sound engineer in here. We have a soundboard in here, which is almost the same as a sound engineer, except for the technical knowledge part. So we're going to be learning how to do this as we go. The plan is for the first 4 episodes, we're going to do 3 segments for each of our shows. Like we said, no guests yet. And then when we get going, it's going to be 5 segments per episode. And We're going to have not just our beautiful voices for you to listen to, but
other beautiful voices, just not as beautiful as mine.
Kirk was singing earlier. So I know exactly how beautiful his voice is. So let's dive in.
All right, so we're going to talk about Kenya Barris a little bit and Blackish. So last week, I guess about a week ago today, Kenya Barris, they were on a panel for Blackish at TCA, which is the Television Critics Association. And as they were going through the panel, a reporter asked Kenya, about the ratings for Blackish, and and did he know how many black people were watching this show? And Kenya snapped a little bit and was like, hey, I will be so happy when diversity is not a word anymore. And it's that sort of led into a bigger conversation. Tracy Ellis Ross chimed in because they felt that these questions being asked to Kenya aren't necessarily helpful in forwarding the discussion. So Darren, what do you think about Kenya's comments and the reporter's question?
Yeah, I mean, there's I can understand why he would get tired over time, when at some point you just want to be like, look, I'm the best comedy on TV. Right. I'm not the black show. Right. So you can understand where he's coming from. My thing about the word diversity, I mean, you and I we should say, as we're starting to get to know our audience, we have purposefully, for the last couple of months as we've been planning this show, not talked about these subjects,
right?
So that we're kind of saving it. So we don't necessarily, know everything that the other thinks about some of these recent current events. But my personal thing is the way the word diversity has started to mean not white,
right?
Basically,
right.
And the word, the actual word is supposed to mean varied.
Right.
And because of the sort of clumsiness of how we address race in our world today, we've needed a way to, I guess, politically correctly say, hey, this is not white. And so you wind up using the expression, oh, it's a diverse actor. Well, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Because technically, it's just really like, all right, diversity is just reality. It's like we live in a country where there are black, white, Latino, there's all different types of people. So diversity is really just reality. But the problem is that reality is not necessarily reflected in what we see on television. At least not as much as it possibly could. And so I think that's why the word is thrown around so much, because like to me, like if you think about diversity and inclusion, like diversity is just like the noun. Diversity says, okay, we're gonna have these types of people in a room or on a cast. And to me, inclusion is like, all right, once we have these people, this is how we're going to treat them. They're going to feel inclusive and feel whole. So I think that there is a difference, and the word is used because it's a catchword. It's something that we've been talking about for so long. So it drives media. People want it's the word that sticks out the most. So,
and there's, you and I went out of our way not to use the word diversity in the title of this show,
right.
Or I don't think we even have it in any of the show description or anything. We were leaning more towards inclusive as what we wanted to call this, for these reasons that we're talking about.
Right, and I think that in just getting back to Kenya, I think the issue is like, you see Kenya's like, I am doing the work. Like if you go into his writer's room, you're gonna see a staff that looks like reality, that staff that looks like what America looks like. And he's like, quit asking me this question. I don't want to answer this question anymore. It's the same thing with Shonda Rhimes. John Ridley has said something similar, in that the word diversity, one, is a bit dated, and also it's typically only asked to black creatives because it sort of makes other people uncomfortable, especially if they know that their show is a show where they are, whether below the line or just on screen, is majority white. And so I think that people, or this reporter in general, because when Tracee Ellis Ross did ask, well, have you asked this question to other showrunners? And the person was like, no. And that's the problem. It's like, why are you asking Shonda Rhimes about diversity when her show is diverse? It's the same thing that happened in the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable, and it was like Jason Reitman and Steve McQueen and all these people, and they were talking about it. And then the person who was asked a question was Steve McQueen, and he's like, ask these dudes. And Jason Reitman was like, I don't want to touch that. And that's the thing. And he hasn't had a hit movie since. So, God don't like ugly.
So do you think, like, the frustration that you think would be coming from someone like Kenya Barris is like I said, it's like, hey, I'm making this great entertainment on the regular, and can we please talk about something else? Like,
can we talk about like why my show is like actually great and universal and not just great and black? You know what I'm saying? And yes, it's in the title, but the themes and the things they talk about on the show are there. Of course, there are things that other people could possibly learn about black people, but some of the things are just universal. It's about a family. Like, we're not a different family from you. Everybody has families.
So do you think it's an unfair question? I mean, because I completely understand his being tired of hearing the question, but is it, if I'm a reporter looking for an angle on a story, right? I'm trying to find a way to, get into the story, make it approachable. Is it unfair to raise the fact that this is, one of the first successful, I mean, it's basically Cosby Show Blackish, right? I mean,
right.
At least in the mainstream.
Well, I mean, if you think about like in the 90s and in the late 80s, I mean, Fox had like In Living Color and Martin and Living Single and those shows.
But it's a family show. I mean, it's
right. Well, I guess if you think about family shows, then I mean, I guess the last one would be like either Everybody Hates Chris or My Wife and Kids, maybe, which was also.
But those are on smaller networks.
My Wife and Kids.
I mean, there's other shows, definitely.
Right.
In the sort of like top 10, this is an amazing show,
right?
You know, and so I mean, I guess I'm questioning whether it's a completely unfair question or if it's the only question he ever gets. You know what I mean?
I think that's part of it. I don't think that he necessarily thinks the question is unfair. It's like, okay, so this is what you choose to ask me after I've been nominated for,
right?
You know, outstanding comedy. It's like, how many black people watch your show? Like, that's essentially what she said. Like, and I can see him being like, that is not what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about why I have one of the best shows on television, not how many black people watch my show. And so I don't think the question is necessarily unfair, but it can feel that way, especially if she's not. Then it's disingenuous if she's not asking it to other people. You know what I'm saying? Like if the diversity question does not come up to other showrunners, if it's an issue that people actually want to see a real solution to, then why are you asking people who are already doing the work? And I think that's when it becomes where you're just looking for a story that we've been talking about for 5 years or 20 years or 30 years. You're asking something you already know the answers to. And I guess in a sense, in this question, she was asking about demographics. But I just think, I mean, honestly, I just think the question it was a stupid question. And he, you know, he clapped back, and good for him. And I think Tracy Ellis Ross, she came in and she, you know, I like that she asked, well, do you ask this to other showrunners? And the person was like, no. And I think that's a problem, because I think it should be asked to other people if you actually want to make a difference in television.
Right. Well, and the real question would be, would you ask this to other white showrunners, right? Because like we know that they do ask that question of, you know, the Mindy Kalings of the world, right? That goes straight after the race aspect of things.
Right. And I don't think that, I mean, they haven't. So I guess the question is, I don't think that they would, because they haven't. Right. And there's been so much conversation about diversity and inclusion and the lack of female directors and all this stuff. And they never ask the people who actually need to talk about it.
Which is a good segue into our next segment. We're going to have to leave that part there. By all means, you know, these are the exact reasons that we sat down and said, hey, there should be a podcast. There should be more dialogue about this kind of thing. So no doubt we'll come back to those ideas that we were just talking about. But for now, let's head off to segment 2. Hey, it is segment 2, and this is the part of the show where once we're up and going, this will be kind of where we take a step back and talk to our guests and find out more about them, find out what they do in the industry and kind of their experiences dealing with those aspects of the industry that we're not exactly happy with. That caused us to start a podcast. And that's what we're talking about this time. Since it's our first show, we thought that we should interview us.
Right. We are our guests the first week because we are the most important people here today. So, yeah. I am Kirk Moore. I am a TV drama writer. I currently am writing on American Crime on ABC. Yay, American Crime. I started out, I started out a long time ago, but I guess you said I got my first break. I was in the NBC Writers on the Verge Diversity Fellowship. I got in 2014, I think it was. And yeah, and from there, I was staffed on American Crime, and then I worked on a show on Netflix called 13 Reasons Why, and now I'm back on American Crime. So yeah,
and it should be said, me. If you are listening to this right now and you're not watching American Crime, remedy that.
Yeah, watch it. All of y'all, watch it.
because it's some of the best drama on TV as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just pitching because Kirk's sitting across the table looking at me. I'm doing you a favor as the audience that American Crime is worth your time. It's another one of those anthology shows with a repeating cast, kind of in the style of American Horror Story, except not like that.
There's no horror. Yeah, well, there is horror in American Crime, but American horror.
It's who we are horror.
Right.
And I'm Darren Setti. I am not yet a TV writer, but so shall I be.
And he should be, and that's just it. So, yeah.
So Kirk and I met each other in a class. And afterwards, we formed a writers group with a couple of other very talented writers that you guys have become kind of second family to me, honestly. Like,
right.
We
spend every Sunday together, probably 2 hours longer than we are supposed to every Sunday, which makes my lunch on Sunday go late, and then everybody gets mad at me. But yeah, we spend Sundays together. We read each other's material. We talk about stuff like this. And, we try to make each other better, one, creatively, and also just in the way that we interact with one another in the industry just in general.
And it's half like writing group and half life coaching.
And support group.
Half support group, exactly.
And helping me, get over whatever depression I'm going through because I can't figure out what to write that week and, all that good stuff.
So if you are a writer, I cannot recommend highly enough finding the right group of people to be a writers group with. And
yes, and I say, most people need writers groups, whether you are a working writer or you're breaking in. I know so many people who still, they meet with a select group of writers, and we all, they read each other's material and give each other notes because you don't know everything. So people need to read your material as much as possible.
So my background, I've been kind of all over the place, but I've always been doing some form of digital media over the course of my life. I founded a group that put up a website called brevitytv.com that's sketch comedy for the web. And that group, over the course of 4 or 5 years, we built out like a couple hundred different sketches. We've had one of them cross the magical 1 million hit mark, and another, right? And another couple on course to do it, even though we're not actively producing right now. But I will definitely be referencing that quite a bit because that's my production experience in a nutshell. Before that, I did sketch comedy for the theater, so that's kind of my other side of things is the live in front of an audience side of things.
So why are we doing this, Darren?
Why are we doing this exactly? What force out there is significant enough that you would brave the 405 to come down to my office and sit in front of microphones with me while I tried to figure out twiddling knobs for a while?
Right. I mean, if people know me on social media, I generally talk about social stuff and things that are going on in the industry and television quite often. So I felt like, why not just turn this into, something more direct and something more purposeful? Darren and I, like I said, we meet every Sunday and we talk about these things quite often. So I was just like, this would be a really good thing for us to be able to get it out and get other people who are working and writing or directing and or whatever capacity they work in the industry, and then just have an actual real conversation about this, because I think that that's the problem, in that a lot of the stuff that's happening in terms of diversity and inclusion is kind of lip service, I feel, and that people don't really say, what they really think or what they really feel, and for fear of a couple of things, whether it's not getting another job, being yelled at and cursed out on social media. There are a lot of reasons why people don't want to talk about it, but I feel like if we are going to make it better, then we do have to talk about it. We were talking about Blackish, and last season, the first, the premiere, The Word. What was interesting to me about that, which was my favorite episode of that season, is that there were sort of like two ways that they discussed the N-word in The Word. And it was like the way they discussed it in the house and the way it was talked about at work. And I think that is what we're sort of getting at, is that there are different ways that we choose to talk about this, whether we're in public or privately. And I think that if we're going to make this better, there's going to be some uncomfortable things that need to be said publicly so that we can make this, better.
Which speaks to the sort of, there's a little bit of an elephant in the room with a podcast like this. So there's the why are we doing this, and then there's the hey Deron, why are you doing this?
Right.
Straight white guy. What's your deal, right? And what it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, is like it's not black people who need to fix the problem. It's white people who need to fix the problem, and that's not going to happen unless white people are willing to dialogue.
Right.
I when I was working on this idea with Kirk, I talked to a friend of mine who was black, and he said to me, like, "Well, are you prepared to be the bad guy week after week?" And I'm like, well, I hope
you
that's
won't
not
be the bad guy.
Hope that's not exactly.
Some days, not today, but
right.
Yeah.
But his point is right. Like it's a sensitive issue, and if we're gonna go there, which we are, then you're laying it out and you're having the dialogue, and I think to me that's important for that to happen. And like I say, like white people have to be involved because you can't just do an echo chamber of like, hey, we need to fix racial issues. Yeah, we sure
right.
do. Yeah, we should,
Right. And there are several people, and not just black people. There are women, there are, Arab people. People are tired of talking about diversity, but I don't think it's necessarily the word. It's the way that it's framed and the way that we do discuss it. Because if everybody just repeating the same thing, it's like we used to go to panels when we were trying to like break in, and you go to one panel and they say, oh, keep fighting. Oh, have a spec. Oh, have a pilot. You hear the same things over and over again. And then you get to a point to where you're like, I don't want to go to any more panels. I just want to get a job.
I know already. Somebody hire me.
Right. So I think that's where we're at. We're at the no more panel stage where people don't want to be told the same thing over and over and over again. It's like, let's try to fix this shit. And people are trying to do stuff about it. But I think that, again, like this reporter that we talked about before, and with Kenya Barris, I feel like that question was disingenuous, and I think that questions like that need to be directed to people who don't look like him.
I think, speaking to, again, the why are you doing this, the getting a dialogue going, the part of why I come to something like this, I'm a recent dad. I have 2 kids, a boy who's 2, and my little girl is now, she just turned 3 months. She's like 3.5 right now. And so some of it is you're looking out there at the world and you're like, this is not the world that I want my kids to experience. I don't want them to go on the internet and watch people die.
Right.
Or on TV and literally see people die because we have disconnects between who people are and what people perceive of who people are.
And in the time of, in this political era with Donald Trump and his dry ass lips on television, just, spewing all this stuff, I think that it's time that we have this dialogue in politics, entertainment, just in whatever business worlds that we have, because I feel like it needs to be talked about in a very real and direct way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, we want to be able to do, it's not just the entertainment industry, right?
Right.
Because the fact of the matter is, when a cop gets out of his car and approaches a black person, what's going through his head, right? There's 2 sides to that. And we don't want to get too deep into the politics side of things, right? But we are in a world where they're going in that like they're going into war.
Right. You read that the Department of Justice report in Baltimore, and it really does seem like that. But then also, and I think the way we'll use this show is that it'll be the way that we approach it, in that, like, how does the media spin these stories? Like, when they do report what happens on the news with these sort of killings and stuff like that, like, how are they saying it? How are we talking about it? How are they framing the narrative? Like, those things matter, because that's the way people then take in that knowledge, and most people only understand buzzwords and stuff like that now. People don't read articles; they only read headlines. You know what I'm saying?
So I think the news side of it is one thing, but then there's also the issue of portrayal, right?
Right.
Because if you get right down to it, if you look at the numbers of population in the U.S. versus the number of roles, realistically, like the African American community is closer to proper representation on TV,
Right.
certainly than compared to Asian or Latino.
Right.
However, the kinds of roles that people play, and what that does to the public perception of people.
Right. Representation.
That representation is absolutely, again, I have a little daughter. She's going to grow up a woman in this world, and on some level, it's exciting to think that there's a woman running for president, right? That matters to my little daughter. But I don't care about that as much as I care about the fact that there's a female Jedi for her to look up to, right? In all seriousness, because that portrayal is, we can have a female president, but when's the last time a president saved the world, right?
Right.
Jedis save the world.
Right.
And, so I think that portrayal has a whole lot to do with things, and I think that's one of the things that part of what motivates me.
Right.
So anyway, we definitely want to make this podcast as
audience friendly and
audience involved. We want everybody to participate. We're gonna have when we get to doing 5 segments, we're gonna have one called the feedback checkback. We're gonna look to Twitter. We're gonna look to YouTube comments, and we want you to tell us what you want us to talk about, what you want us to ask our guests about.
Right. Yeah. I mean, something happens every day, so
right.
So there's not a shortage of fuck shit online that we can talk about that happens in the industry. So we'll have a lot to talk about, but we definitely want to talk about the things that you are concerned about, or the what's happening, whether it's specifically about the industry and creative and writing techniques and trends, or if we're talking about something like what we talked about with Kenya or with Clint Eastwood. I mean, there's so many things that we can do. So just
tell us what we forgot. Tell us what we got wrong. There's several ways you can reach out to us. Go to the Good Talk Network. Well, let me say it properly. Go to goodtalknetwork.com. On there, there's under participate, there's the ability to go to a contact form. You can come in there and you can say, write us a letter. And we might share it in the podcast, given in response to what we've already said. Oh, you guys totally missed the boat on when you were talking about Kenya Barris. Let us know that stuff, or use Twitter. You can do hashtag Hollywood Inclusive. We will be actively paying attention to anybody who's hashtagging for that. Also, we want to establish the hashtag HIQA, Hollywood Inclusive Question and Answers. So by all means, you can quickly participate in the conversation with us there, because this is our podcast, as they say in the intro. Hear all the voices. Was that cheesy enough to finish out the segment?
I think that was cheesy enough. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna always try to end this podcast on a lighter note. We'll get into some serious topics, and so we want to try to end things so on some happy shit. So today we're gonna do like a nice little hooray for Hollywood. There was the California Film Commission. They released this list of all the projects that were coming out and receiving tax credits, and on that list, we did see that Ava Duvernay is going to become the first woman of color to direct a film over $100 million. I think they had it listed at $103 million. So, she will be the first woman of color, and I think the third woman to direct a film over $100 million.
Did you read A Wrinkle in Time as a kid?
I did not read A Wrinkle in Time as a kid. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so.
You're one of those.
I'm one of those. You know that.
I actually didn't as a kid. I when I was a teacher, though, there was a poster in the office of all the Newbery Award-winning or whatever award-winning books there were.
Right.
So as Mr. First-Year Teacher, I made it my goal I'm going to read all of the books on this poster.
So you are overachiever.
Well, I made it through like 3 of the books, so not so much. But that was one of them I read then, and it's still, I mean, it kind of held up even as an adult, because it's a really smart book that explores kind of theoretical physics, honestly, from the point of view of a teenage girl who's coming of age and has to go track down her dad and stuff. So, I mean, it's surprising it hasn't been mined as a movie before now.
Right.
Honestly. So it's neat to see her going in and like, I'm going to cast Oprah and whatnot. Like, I didn't think of the book that way when I read it.
Right.
Like, I think it's an English family.
Right.
But I can totally see Oprah in that role, actually.
Okay, right. Well, I mean, kudos to Disney, for, I think will be Ava's 4th film, and she is making her first $100 million movie. Do you know what was the first $100 million movie?
I don't think I do.
True Lies, 1994.
True Lies. Wow, Arnold.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So long ago.
That was the first $100 million movie, and since then there will be 3 women. What 94? How many years is that? That's what?
It's a lot of years. 22
years. In 22 years, we will have now 3 women directors who've directed something over. I mean, that's kind of fucked up, though.
Yeah. Well. I mean, we're supposed to be ending on a light note, right? But here we are, right back with the problem.
I mean, because that's strange, though. That is very strange.
It's beyond strange. I mean, it's a statistic that gets right to the core of the problem. If you're talking about representation and whatnot, and a demographic that makes up 51% of the population ought to be handling more than what is 3 out of I don't know how many hundreds, right?
Exactly. And Ava's been very vocal about, we hear this thing all the time, well, beginning directors can't direct franchise movies and tentpole movies and movies this big. They don't want to. But I mean, I think there's something to be said that a lot of these, these, take Jurassic Park 3 or was Jurassic Park? It wasn't Jurassic World.
We just had 4 lately. Something. Yeah, well, Jurassic World, yeah, exactly.
Jurassic World. I mean, I think he'd only directed 1 film before then. I mean, there are a lot of these the directors who are getting these tempo movies. They've only directed like 1 indie, and then they get this huge $100 million movie. And so she's calling bullshit.
If they have a penis.
Right, exactly. And so she's been calling bullshit on that, and she's like, I don't want to hear that excuse anymore. Start employing, more female directors or directors of color to direct some of these films, especially, and I do like that you brought up, that she's, tweaking the casting and stuff like that so that she can make this not necessarily.
Well, the Oprah role, I think, is like an interdimensional being. Oh, she's not English.
Oh, okay. Well, so she's interdimensional.
I don't know about the family.
Okay. But just things like that, I feel like even with Black Panther and Luke Cage coming, I mean, I feel like there's a nice world for people to play in if showrunners and creators of color and women are given a chance to be able to put their stamps on some of these bigger name topics.
So there you go. Hooray for Hollywood. We would play
for Hollywood.
Don't sing it. It's not in the public domain. I looked. Okay. Otherwise I would play the theme song right here. But so then another segment we're going to do during the sunshine segment.
I didn't make it that happy. Sorry, guys.
Is tools, tips, and trends, or trends, tips, and tools, or whatever, and that is places that we're going to kind of examine. I mean, we can't make the entire thing about what pissed us off in the entertainment industry lately. So sometimes we're going to look at, a word to the wise for those coming up. And you had one you wanted to share with people.
Yeah, I read. I wanted to see what you wanted to think about it, what you thought about it. I read this article in I think it was Vulture, and it was about how comedy and satire is becoming a bigger trend than, say, drama. So, like, the Mad Men and Sopranos and the Breaking Bads are slowly starting to fade away. And then
dear God, I hope so. For one thing, I mean, full respect to you drama writers, but the pendulum should start to swing the other way at some point. We went through
the comedies have to be good.
The death of comedy. Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that's what it comes down to, is right.
Right.
We've gone through a systematic replacement of everybody got tired
Right.
of the oversaturation in the 80s of setup, punchline, laugh
Right.
track, right? And so comedy had to reinvent itself, and it has done so in several different ways. And what you're saying in this article is that it sounds like they're pointing out how comedy and drama are merging, which
Right.
I say God bless it. I mean, you're a drama writer who always writes funny, and I'm a comedy writer who always writes depressing as fuck, right?
Right. I mean, I feel that, but that's the thing. I think what this article coming on that was really interesting was that they were saying, like, in comedy, there are certain things that you can do with the comedy because it's more character driven, that you can actually talk about more current and relatable things, whether it's depression or there, or you.
So
can
what
be
shows were they talking about?
They brought up BoJack Horseman.
Yeah.
And You're the Worst.
Yeah.
Veep. Silicon Valley, like those are some of the shows. Even Transparent, which I still say, I mean, it's 30 minutes, but it's a 30-minute drama.
So it's
really.
partly about the crossing of the genres, and
Right.
partly about the fact that we're trending towards I don't know if you call it smarter shows or satire as opposed
more,
to
because the article pointed out that with a lot of the dramas, it's so plot driven, and so because it's plot driven, it doesn't have time to comment on what's going on in the world or comment on certain things because it has to move that plot and that story forward.
Well, I can tell you, for me, when it comes to like shows I like, you mentioned, you go to all the different things about how to break in, and they tell you to write your pilot, write your spec, or anything like that.
Right.
And to me, the ones that I always want to get involved in are the ones where it's like, I don't know if I could do that. Like that challenge of, there's most of television I watch, and my wife gets mad because, at minute 13, I tell her how each of the 3 storylines are going to wrap up, because that's sort of the potential energy that the writer has put on the table, right?
Right.
But when I watch an episode of Silicon Valley, I'm wrong every time. I mean,
Right.
that show is magnificent in terms of how clever they are.
Right.
And BoJack Horseman just kicks you in the gut whenever it feels like. It's amazing.
And I don't disagree with the article in that a lot of the dramas, and they mention Mr. Robot or Homeland, and I do think that some of these shows do great character work, but I do think there is something to the fact that because the stories are so. A lot of the stories are so plot driven. You got to get to the next twist or that secret reveal that we don't get to delve in as much. But there are shows that do it, like American Crime. We do get to do things like that, and we do delve into what's happening. Whether it's race or religion. This year we'll be doing a lot with economics and whatnot. And if you look at shows like I watch Rectify, it does a lot with spirituality, and that's on the Sundance Channel. I mean, there are shows there, but I think there is something to, that a lot of the shows are becoming much more plot driven, so we don't get the latitude that, say, a lot of the comedies are doing right now.
Do you think we're leaving the age of mindless television as we get so many channels and everybody gets to kind of push the art?
I guess, what would you consider mindless television in?
Well, I'm not going to offend any future hirers.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
But
I think
let me put it this way. I've had friends who say that, at the end of a long day of work, they just want to put TV on and they just want to, veg out, right?
Right.
And it seems like, we still have that veg out kind of comedy.
Right.
Or drama, for that matter, right? There's procedurals. Basically CBS, right?
Right. I think that, if you look at even with, and this is not me speaking out of turn, but like when you're looking at ABC, I know Channing, she did an interview and they're going back to procedurals. They're going to go back to doing more. They want to go back into that lane. So I think there is something to, like, just being able to go and sit down and watch an episode and say, I don't have to worry about what happens next week because I'm going to get a new case. Does that creatively satisfy me as a writer? Maybe, maybe not, depending on what season you catch me in. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I'm no stranger to getting on, throwing it on USA and watching episode 238 of Law and Order SVU.
You can always write the world's best episode of that show that doesn't.
Exactly. I mean, that's what happens, when we get into these programs. We write specs and we pick procedurals. A lot of times it's an easier way to get into a world because you don't have to worry about all the serialized elements that you have in the show. So,
well, so there you have it. There's our tip and trend for today is that, if you're looking at where we think the industry's going, heading towards more of a satire, some trend out of the dark side of drama.
Right, but if you're a drama writer, listen, we rule television. We're everywhere.
Dark.
Write dramas, but again, don't be afraid to, have an infusion of both because, I mean, it works quite often.
Dying is easy. Anyway, so the last thing we want to leave you with is just, again, a call for you to participate as much as possible in our show. When we have guests, we're going to start with a what's your favorite? And we would love for those to come from you. So what's your favorite?
You can ask us anything.
Right.
What is your favorite drink? What is your favorite TV show? What is your favorite sexual position after 3 months in a relationship? Whatever.
Wow.
But don't be afraid of the answer we give back.
Yeah, if you deserve whatever answer you get. So we will share your favorites with us. Ask the question, what's your favorite? Whatever. Fill in the blank. Ask us via Twitter. Ask us via our website. The other opportunity I wanted to mention for people to participate in the show is record our opening. Plug yourself in our opening.
Yes,
if
please.
You heard the opening of today's show, my friend Laura jumped on there. She is a director. She is working on a very low budget feature right now, and we've worked together on many projects. I can tell you that your latte money will be stretched to its furthest possible extent by this woman. She's amazing at making something out of nothing. So by all means, check out her show, Rich Kids, on Seed and Spark. To contribute to their drive.
Please.
She's putting together a feature about a group of Latino kids who attempt to break into a mansion. I believe she calls it a border wall. It might be a metaphor. I don't want to spoil anything. But definitely check that out. She's a talented director that we've all loved working with, and she could use your attention. And you, as our listener, could also be a person who gets some attention on our show by recording the opening. You can see the instructions on our website, and you can pitch your latest project or just pitch yourself. You could use more Twitter followers, couldn't you?
We all could.
Speaking of,
you can follow myself? I'm an English major. You can follow me on Twitter at KirkWrites79, and on Instagram at KirkWrites79, and Facebook is just my name, but don't bother me too much on Facebook.
And I am Digital Deron. My name is spelled Deron for some reason. So I'm Digital Deron at on both Twitter and Instagram. I don't really so much do the Instagram, but I kind of view it as poetry.
Take pictures, Dan. Take pictures.
We'll post something of us today,
right?
Up on Instagram. And follow us. Also, you can follow the Good Talk Network at Good Talk Network. That's where you can find out announcements about this show and others coming soon.
And don't be afraid to interact with us on Twitter. I'm always on there.
He's constantly on there.
Talking about stuff and great music from Future and, Young Thug. So, all that good stuff. Follow me and we'll have good dialogue. Don't come sideways at me, please.
He will shut you down, Twitter style.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to engaging in a dialogue with you over the coming weeks, the coming however long
weeks, months, years. We want to continue this thing, and we want to
change the world a little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So let's do that, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
All right. Thanks, Kirk. Good talk.
Good talk.